Okay, so the passage that we're going to be thinking about with three different literary critics begins at the bottom, page 55 in this version of Mrs. Dalloway. Okay, so I'm going to read. It's only about 2 pages long, so I'm going to read it, stop the video, and then in the next video talk about two of the literary critics that deal with this passage. Okay, page 55, near the bottom of the page. The gray nurse resumed her knitting, as Peter Walsh on the hot seat beside her began snoring. In her gray dress, moving her hands indefatigably, yet quietly, she seemed like the champion of the rights of sleepers, like one of those spectral presences which rise in twilight in woods made of sky and branches. The solitary traveler, haunter of lanes, disturber of ferns and devastator of great hemlock plants, looking up, suddenly sees the giant figure at the end of the ride. Product placement. By conviction, an atheist perhaps, he is taken by surprise with moments of extraordinary exultation. Nothing exists outside us except a state of mind, he thinks. A desire for solace, for relief, for something outside these miserable pygmies, these feeble, these ugly, these craven men and women. But even if he can conceive of her, then, in some sort, she exists, he thinks, and advancing down the path with his eyes upon sky and branches, he rapidly endows them with womanhood, sees with amazement how grave they become, how majestically, as the breeze stirs them, they disperse with a dark flutter of the leaves, charity, comprehension, absolution, and then, flinging themselves suddenly aloft, confound the piety of their aspect with a wild carouse. Such are the visions which proffer great cornucopias full of fruit to the solitary traveller, or murmur in his ear like sirens lolloping away on the green sea waves, or are dashed in his face like bunches of roses, or rise to the surface like pale faces which fishermen flounder through floods to embrace. I've always loved that sentence, like pale faces which fishermen flounder through floods to embrace. It's incredible. Such are the visions which ceaselessly float up, pace beside, put their faces in front of the actual thing, often overpowering the solitary traveller and taking away from him the sense of the earth, the wish to return, and giving him for substitute a general peace, as if, so he thinks as he advances down the forest ride, all this fever of living were simplicity itself, and myriads of things merged in one thing, and this figure, made of sky and branches as it is, had risen from the troubled sea. He is elderly, past 50 now, as a shape might be sucked up out of the waves, to shower down from her magnificent hands compassion, comprehension, absolution. So, he thinks, I may never go back to the lamplight, to the sitting room, never finish my book, never knock out my pipe, never ring for Mrs. Turner to clear away. Rather, let me walk straight on to this great figure who will, with a toss of her head, mount me on her streamers. Let me blow to nothingness with the rest. Such are the visions. The solitary traveller is soon beyond the wood, and there, coming to the door with shaded eyes, possibly to look for his return, with hands raised, with white apron blowing, is an elderly woman, who seems, so powerful is this infirmity, to seek over a desert a lost son, to search for a rider destroyed, to be the figure of the mother whose sons have been killed in the battles of the world. So, as the solitary traveller advances down the village street where the women stand knitting, and the men dig in the garden, the evening seems ominous, the figures still, as if some august fate, known to them, awaited without fear, were about to sweep them into complete annihilation. Indoors, among ordinary things, the cupboard, the table, the window-sill with its geraniums, suddenly the outline of the landlady, bending to remove the cloth, becomes soft with light, an adorable emblem which only the recollection of cold human contacts forbids us to embrace. She takes the marmalade. She shuts it in the cupboard. There is nothing more tonight, sir? But to whom does the solitary traveler make reply? Then the next section begins. So the elderly nurse knitted over the sleeping baby in Regent's Park. So Peter Walsh snored. Okay. We'll be back with what two critics have to say about this passage.